Have you ever witnessed a moment so unexpected that it challenges everything you thought you knew about respect and justice? On a warm late afternoon, Sarah Williams, a 78-year-old resilient woman, rolls down her familiar neighborhood streets in her well-worn wheelchair. The golden glow of the sun, the cracked sidewalks, and the lingering scent of fresh rain set the stage for an encounter that will shock and move you. As Sarah makes her way home, with her groceries neatly balanced on her lap, her thoughts briefly wander to her beloved son, Jacob Williams, the president, whose busy schedule keeps him away from the comforting visits of old times. But what happens when those who are sworn to protect suddenly betray the very dignity they're meant to uphold? If you believe every person deserves respect regardless of age or circumstance, comment below, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from. Stay tuned as Sarah's journey takes a devastating turn that will ignite a powerful call for justice. Sarah Williams navigates the worn streets of her neighborhood with quiet determination. Despite the years etched into her weathered face and the limitations imposed by a paralyzing injury sustained in a long-ago accident, she remains steadfast in her pursuit of independence. The late afternoon sun casts a warm golden glow over cracked sidewalks and aging buildings, while the faint aroma of rain from a morning storm lingers in the air. Sarah's trusty wheelchair, though old and creaking, has been her loyal companion through countless hardships. Today, as she wheels along with a small bag of groceries balanced on her lap, she reflects on memories of better times and silently cherishes thoughts of her son, Jacob Williams, the President of the United States. Jacob has always been her pride and joy, a beacon of hope rising from humble beginnings. Yet, the distance created by his busy life leaves her with a bittersweet loneliness. As Sarah turns a familiar corner, she notices two police officers standing by a patrol car, awkwardly parked on the cracked sidewalk. The younger officer, Chad Bradley, with an arrogant smirk and dismissive eyes, steps forward while his partner, Ron Harris, follows close behind. Their presence sends a chill down Sarah's spine, despite a lifetime spent avoiding trouble with law enforcement. "Hey, you there!" Officer Bradley barks in an authoritative tone that leaves no room for misinterpretation. Sarah stops, offering a polite smile in spite of her mounting anxiety, and replies in a steady voice that she is simply heading home. However, Bradley's gaze shifts from her groceries to her wheelchair, and his tone takes on a mocking quality. "Are you sure you're really disabled?" he asks, his words laced with suspicion and disdain. Sarah, taken aback yet determined to defend her truth, explains that she has been in the wheelchair for nearly a decade after a serious car accident. But Bradley scoffs at her explanation, insinuating that many people feign disability to exploit the system. The tension begins to mount as the officers exchange harsh glances, their demeanors darkening with each passing second. Before Sarah can regain her composure, the situation rapidly deteriorates. Officer Bradley's smirk deepens into a sneer as he steps closer, and Officer Harris, his expression unyielding, looms over her. "Why don't you just stand up and prove you're really what you say you are?" Harris challenges, his tone heavy with condescension. Sarah's heart clenches as a wave of dread sweeps over her. She has long feared that this moment might come, yet never imagined it would unfold so cruelly. "I can't stand," she softly protests, her voice trembling yet resolute. Bradley's eyes narrow, and with a dismissive grunt, he suddenly grabs the handles of her wheelchair. In a flash of callous brutality, he shoves it backward, tipping Sarah off balance and sending her carefully packed groceries spilling onto the cracked pavement. A bottle of milk skitters across the sidewalk, leaking onto the concrete as if symbolizing the injustice of the moment. Sarah cries out in panic, her voice echoing down the street. "What are you doing?" But the officers pay no heed to her pleas. Bradley mocks her vulnerability with a chilling tone. "Let's see how fast you can roll," as he rudely pushes her wheelchair further down the street. Sarah struggles desperately to regain control, her frail hands clutching at the wheels as she fights against the unwanted momentum. The force of their cruelty intensifies, and in a final act of humiliation, Bradley abruptly yanks the wheelchair aside. Sarah's hands slip from the wheels, and she clutches the armrests in a frantic bid to keep herself upright. Her protests grow feeble as Bradley, with a callous disregard for her well-being, produces a pair of handcuffs. "We're taking you in," he declares, his tone devoid of empathy. In one swift, heart-wrenching motion, Bradley roughly cuffs Sarah's hands behind her back, and with brutal force, throws her out of the wheelchair onto the unforgiving sidewalk. Sarah collapses, her body racked with pain and humiliation, as the officers continue their degrading treatment, their voices merging into a symphony of cruelty and racist derision. The scene on the street becomes a tableau of injustice as bystanders watch in silent horror and muted protest. A young woman, holding her phone discreetly, records the unfolding atrocity, capturing every degrading moment. The officers' laughter and jeers mingle with the sounds of falling groceries and Sarah's anguished cries. Officer Bradley's voice cuts through the air as he taunts, "You think your fancy son can protect you, don't you?" The words hang heavy in the rain-soaked air, striking Sarah with the bitter sting of betrayal. She had never shared details about her son's extraordinary status with her neighbors, yet the cruel arrogance of these officers reveals that word travels fast in a community steeped in prejudice. Officer Harris adds venom to the verbal assault. "We know about your kid. It doesn't matter out here. You're just another black woman to us." The weight of their words crushes Sarah's spirit momentarily, leaving her feeling more isolated and dehumanized than ever before. In that painful instant, Sarah's thoughts turn to Jacob, the president, her only beacon of light in a lifetime of struggle and discrimination. The shock of hearing her personal secret, used as a weapon by those sworn to protect, only intensifies her humiliation. The officers, intoxicated by their own power, continue to degrade her. Bradley grabs her wheelchair again, and with relentless force, shoves it further down the street. "Stop, please," Sarah begs, her voice barely audible over the patter of rain and the mounting jeers of the officers. Yet, Bradley's cruelty knows no bounds. He throws her from the wheelchair, and her frail body collapses onto the hard, unforgiving pavement. As her groceries scatter and the bitter taste of injustice fills the air, Sarah is roughly dragged toward a waiting patrol car. The officers roughly toss her into the back seat, her body crumpling against the cold metal as they secure her with handcuffs. Neighbors watch, their faces etched with shock and sorrow, unable to intervene in this display of unchecked brutality. Amid the chaos, the young woman recording the scene continues, determined that this moment of disgrace will not be forgotten. The camera captures every detail: the raw fear in Sarah's eyes, the cruelty in the officers' expressions, and the stark reminder of a systemic injustice that has plagued her community for far too long. News of the heinous assault spreads quickly throughout the community and reaches the highest echelons of power. As Sarah is transported in the patrol car, her battered form and tear-streaked face become the symbol of an injustice that can no longer be ignored. In the quiet of a secure holding cell at the local precinct, Sarah sits on a cold bench, her wrists still cuffed and her spirit shattered by the traumatic encounter. Meanwhile, inside the Oval Office, President Jacob Williams is abruptly pulled into an urgent meeting by his Chief of Staff, Rachel Stevens. With a trembling hand, she presents him with a grainy cell phone video that exposes the brutal treatment of his mother by Officers Bradley and Harris. Jacob's heart sinks as he watches the video, each moment a painful testament to the cruelty inflicted on the one person he holds dearest. His hands clench in silent fury, and his eyes burn with a mix of sorrow and determination. Without a moment's hesitation, Jacob orders an immediate investigation and demands that the Attorney General take swift action. "Get me the Attorney General. I want those officers charged immediately," he declares, his voice heavy with resolve and emotion. Jacob's call to action resonates far beyond the confines of the White House. Within minutes, the Attorney General, John Harold, assures him that a thorough investigation is underway and that Sarah will be released as soon as possible. The incident ignites a firestorm of protest across the nation, with demonstrators rallying under banners, demanding justice for Sarah and an end to police brutality. As the streets fill with voices united in outrage, Jacob defies his security team's cautious advice and heads to the precinct himself. Amid the tense atmosphere, reporters shout questions, while a crowd of protesters falls silent in reverence as the president, flanked by his security detail, steps into the precinct. His voice, calm yet resolute, echoes through the corridors as he demands to know the whereabouts of his mother. At last, a desk sergeant leads him to a holding cell where Sarah sits, her eyes lighting up with relief as she sees her son. "Jacob," she whispers, her voice cracking with both pain and hope. In that tender moment, Jacob kneels beside her, apologizing and vowing that justice will be served, not only for her, but for all those who have suffered under such systemic abuse. The encounter, though deeply traumatic, becomes the catalyst for sweeping reforms. Charges are swiftly filed against Officers Bradley and Harris, and the nation watches as a new era of accountability and change dawns. Sarah Williams' harrowing ordeal, a brutal affront to her dignity and a stark reminder of the deep-seated injustices that persist, has sparked a powerful call for change. Her mistreatment at the hands of Officers Bradley and Harris is not merely an isolated incident. It is a manifestation of a systemic failure to uphold the respect and rights of the most vulnerable among us. In that moment of cruelty, on a rain-soaked afternoon, when Sarah was forcefully thrown from her wheelchair and dehumanized by those entrusted with protection, a community was awakened to the urgent need for reform. President Jacob Williams's swift intervention, fueled by personal grief and righteous anger, has set in motion a process of accountability that reverberates far beyond one neighborhood. His determination to see that his mother, and every individual subjected to such indignity, receives justice underscores the importance of leadership rooted in empathy and unwavering resolve. This incident has ignited a nationwide movement, inspiring protests and calls for comprehensive police reform. It serves as a potent reminder that true change can only be achieved when every voice is heard and every act of injustice is met with decisive action. The Sarah Williams Justice Act, now a beacon of hope for many, embodies the promise of a future where respect and accountability are not just ideals, but everyday realities. As we reflect on this painful chapter, let us honor Sarah's strength and the transformative power of a son's love. May her story encourage us all to stand up against abuse and to foster communities built on compassion, justice, and true equality.